be saying the Pledge of Allegiance with a mask on. Keep an eye on him, Greg.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And George, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to the Planning Board meeting. Today is Thursday, December 16th. At this time, can I ask everybody to stand again? I'm sorry. I was going to take a moment of silence for the victims of the tornadoes and their families. Thank you. Okay, on the agenda today, we have 4 discussion items, and the first will be 1792 Middle Road, Breezy Hill.
Is it okay for me to address this?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay with me.
Chairman of the board, town representatives. My name is Chick Voorhees, and this is Voorhees, we own the environmental planning project.
Can you guys come in the microphone and speak directly into it?
Okay. And I'm the lead consultant in the preparation of the draft EIS for this project. This hearing follows 2 prior hearings that I followed and my associates attended. And I'm here today to provide you with an update and a proposed schedule for the DEIS. It was my understanding that you'd like to continue to move this forward, and there are still some outstanding questions. So I wanted to give you an update of what's been accomplished really since the last planning board meeting, and it's quite a good list. First of all, the unauthorized material on the subject property is mostly removed. This work has been observed both by my office and a representative of the DEC at the site itself. We've had meetings and coordination at the site as recently as yesterday. And the DEC is pleased with the work that's occurred, and there's really just a little bit left to be done. So we will be preparing a closure report as part of this cleanup of the site, and that'll be submitted to the town and the DEC. So I think that was a big item that the planning board was looking for and shows some real progress, really just in a very short amount of time. We also met with planning staff, Jeff Seaman, Jeff Murphy, and that was on Tuesday, and we discussed the review and strategy to amend the DEIS to make sure that you have full information. We've also located the well. I know that that was one of the items that it was buried in a corner of I think the basement of the property, and we are still determining the best methods for accessing the well and testing the water quality for sampling. And we're also updating the project plan to address water supply for fire suppression. We're looking into that with the engineers. We also determined that the site is within an environmental justice area and will follow the applicable DEC requirements as related to permitting. We updated the schedule, or we will be in the process of updating the schedule of operations at the facility to restrict processing times and some of the activities that will occur at the property, and that will be part of the amendment. We're also updating the EIS analysis to reflect the operations at the facility, and we talked about assessing the worst-case conditions so that we have a full seeker review and assessment. We're also reviewing the updated and updating the noise information as well as traffic. And finally, we're addressing all of the other comments in Jeff Seaman's letter of December 1st. Those are some of the highlight items that we talked about. In terms of schedule, my plan is to continue working on this through the holiday period and appear at the planning board on January 6th to provide you with an update on the progress made on all of these items that I mentioned. We also plan to meet with staff again after the January 6th Planning Board meeting to review the revised information. We'd like to make sure that it addresses those items that have been identified. And we'll submit the response to the December 1st Jeff Seaman letter after the follow-up meeting with staff so that the Planning Board has complete information on the record, and that will obviously form the DEIS record. I will also attend the Planning Board meeting of January 20th, which is a continuance of the DEIS public hearing. And if everything is in order at that time, we would ask the Planning Board to close the public hearing, assuming there's no other issues or outstanding comments that need to be received, allow a time period for written comments in conformance with seeker, and that would essentially complete the DEIS review period. And then after all the comments are received, we will provide a response to comments to any outstanding items at that time and assist the board and staff with the preparation of the final environmental impact statement. So that really concludes the remarks. I wanted to just let you know that we hear you loud and clear. We have Jeff's December 1st letter, which is a good guidebook on providing complete information, and we will be proceeding in that regard. There's one other thing. Stephen Lasquadro, our project attorney, is here, and we do want to be very clear that the applicant will not be pursuing a special permit for a wholesale operation. And Stephen and I have been working on the language, reviewing the code, and we will have confirmation with the applicant on exactly how the operation will be conducted so that that is very clear. But that was one of the other items in Mr. Seaman's letter that needs to be resolved. And we've always said we weren't pursuing that, but we're going to put some teeth to that and provide a legal guidelines for how the facility would operate so that that's very clear. So I'm here if there are any questions. Mr. Lasquadro's here if there are any questions, and we appreciate your time and patience as we continue the DEIS process.
Thank you. I appreciate addressing the issues. And does anyone have any questions
Yeah,
here?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
You mentioned that the DEC was on site as this material has been removed. Have they given you any preliminary reports as to what they found within this stuff that's been taken off the site?
All of this was construction and demolition type material. None of it was found to be contaminated. All of it has been removed to an appropriate off-site location. We did file a work plan with DEC, so they were aware of it throughout this period. And the gentleman's name is Nick Romero. I know that Jeffrey has spoken with him, and they've been satisfied that removing the material has been exactly what they were looking for.
But they've not given you any paperwork with supporting documentation that says there's been nothing found to be.
That was in our original site characterization information that we did submit to DEC. So I'll make sure that in the closure report we indicate that as well, just so that it's very clear. And we have weight tickets for all the material that's been transported. And as I said, even yesterday, Nick Romero from DEC was on site with my project manager.
And the second question I wanted to ask is that at the last meeting, it was indicated that the material that has been recycled will be used for their own use. And I believe that we had asked for an idea of where this use is and the amount that can be used, because your client actually has other locations across the island. So one of my concerns is where is it going to be used, and will it be exclusively used, we'll call this the East End?
I do have a list of projects that our client provided us with. Some of them are in Suffolk County, some of them are in Nassau County. They do have a facility at 478 Grand Boulevard in
Right.
Westbury. And what we would be looking to provide you with in terms of information is the nature of their business, how they need to be able to take material from roadside demolition projects, process it into RCA, and then reuse it back at certain sites. So I can't say at this point exactly where all the material is coming from and where it's going, but we do have a list of 16 projects that have occurred recently and 10 projects that are coming up online that are very informative to us, just to demonstrate that they have the material, it's under their control through their highway company, their highway construction company. Many of them are municipal contracts in towns and villages, and, to the extent that may or may not answer
Right.
your question, that's what I have to
Well,
present
in
at this
addition,
time.
in addition to Westbury, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but in addition to Westbury, do you not also have a plant in Deer Park, which is a lot closer?
That I am not certain. I don't think it's the same type of facility that we're talking about at Westbury site or what we're looking to do here. I don't know, Stephen, do you know
I'm not aware.
of the Deer Park?
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
I know there was something in Jeff's report that he had done some research on, other sites that the applicant had control of. But when we spoke to Mr. Stasi, the only one that's comparable is the one at 478 Grand Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
I think it might just be helpful to mention.
Can you just come up and state your name for the record, please?
Good afternoon. Happy holidays to all of you. Stephen Losquadro on behalf of the applicant. Welcome, Eileen. Nice to see you. Just might bear mentioning, perhaps to Mr. Nenaro's question as a point of distinction, perhaps, that we refer to Mr. Stasi and his interest in the company here, which is Breezy Hill Group. But there are also relatives with the Stasi name who have separate companies that are not this particular company. And I'm just offering that may give rise to thinking that there's something in Deer Park as opposed to Westbury. I'm just not familiar with a Deer Park facility, but certainly now that you've mentioned it, we'll examine that. So when we come back, as Mr. Voorhees mentioned at the next meeting, we can answer that and speak to that with some more specificity. But I just wanted to mention that perhaps there may be a distinction that needs to be made related to companies that are owned by relatives and not necessarily them. But in any event, I think it's important that whatever you might want to know, of course, and whatever we can do to provide the most details possible, since you've mentioned that, we'll make sure that we have something definitive at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Voorhees, can I just ask you a question, please? Where the well is concerned, how did you end up finding that? I mean, this has been going on since, of 2017, and suddenly the well is there. Can you give me details
Well,
on that, please?
practically speaking, and this is why you've asked the question so many times, there has to be a well. There's not public water and there's been a house there. So we were relying on the applicant to give us that information. And I finally sent my project manager, who's also a hydrogeologist, out to the site. He's been there coordinating with DEC, and he explored it more thoroughly and was able to locate it. So apologies for just not having the information readily available before, but we're making very good progress on it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Not for me.
No, we're good? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion over 60 Hidden Acres Path.
So this is a question that's being posed to the board for an interpretation of an existing 25-foot, it's quote, a vegetative retention buffer, which was depicted on an approved major subdivision map for a subdivision known as Meadowcrest 3, which was approved by the Riverhead Planning Board by resolution dated December 4th, 1997. The reason this came to be is the applicant, a The applicant made application for a building permit to legalize a gazebo, a brick fireplace, as well as a decorative pond in their backyard. When they submitted a survey, which is included in the packet that I distributed to the board, the building department identified that there is a 25-foot wide vegetation retention buffer as depicted on that map. So the applicant was directed to come to the planning board for an interpretation on that. I did research through the files of the Meadowcrest 3 subdivision, which again was approved, resolution December 4th, 1997. When I looked through that resolution, there is no mention of the 25-foot vegetation retention buffer. There's absolutely no language with reference to what can be done, what can't be done, what purpose it was established for. The only mention anywhere in that file that I was able to locate anything that even really kind of gleaned close to it was in an undated planning report, which is located in that file. On the third page of that report, and I'll read, quote, "The ordinance does not require the provision of a vegetated buffer to state-owned pine barrens habitat, camp, Wawipec. However, the planning board could require a non-disturbance area along the rear yards of lots backing to Pine Barrens core land and the provision of a fence to discourage encroachment onto state property." Did a little further research. I looked at the declaration of covenants and restrictions which were filed on the properties in that subdivision. Those were filed with the Suffolk County Clerk. Again, in these declaration of covenants and restrictions, I found no language pertaining to that buffer. So really, we're before the board here for the interpretation on the conditions of this buffer. My opinion, I've spoken with Jeff, I've spoken with counsel of the planning board. Really, if the sole purpose and intent for that buffer was the one paragraph in that planning report, which was to discourage encroachment onto state land, the applicant has submitted a survey. It shows that the structures are clearly within the limits of their property. I have prepared a resolution which would allow specifically these structures to be legalized. It does not address if the applicant needs any kind of zoning board relief from setbacks or impervious coverage, but the resolution would really specifically allow these structures as they don't appear to be in contradiction of any established covenants or any conditions.
And the site plan actually shows a fence on the property.
It shows a fence on the property. You know, it's like one of these things where there's no definition to it. It's not harming anybody. These areas were not required. I did a little bit of research. They were not required for any kind of clearing limits for pine barrens. So as long as which the applicant has demonstrated, they're not encroaching onto that state property, which is located to the east of them, we didn't really see any harm in allowing the interpretation to permit these structures.
Do you know if anyone else, I know that this covers about, I don't know, nine other parcels. Has anyone else ever applied for a CO? Does anybody have a current CO?
To my knowledge, I have not seen any. I mean, just looking at an aerial photograph of the subject properties, there are a number of properties that have pools and patios. Again, I haven't seen a survey to identify whether they're within that 25-foot buffer.
Right.
But I don't have any record. I wasn't able to find any records of anyone else trying to legalize any structures within there. We do have a representative for the applicant, I believe, Mr. Rogers. If the board had any questions for him? Otherwise,
I don't have any questions.
No, I think it makes sense. There is no definition to the buffer. No, I don't have a problem with
it's really not harming anybody. It's on his property.
Okay,
So.
well,
it. And we could probably charge him more on his property taxes too.
Stop.
Okay, let's move on to the third discussion, which is Long Island Cauliflower Association. Would someone like to come up?
How you doing? Doug Adams, Young and Young. I wasn't notified of this meeting. I just happened to look at the agenda and saw that it was on there, so I'm just here to answer any questions. Ike Israel's here as well.
So this is really just a project update. The planning board has been entertaining a site plan application for the Long Island Cauliflower Association. It was previously a site plan application to develop a 7-acre parcel on the northwest corner of Mill Road and Old Country Road. That application proposed approximately 42,000 square feet of new retail space, as well as a 4,900 square foot fast food restaurant with drive-through. The application has since been amended. The application now proposes essentially 4 restaurants. The site plan that I distributed to the board, the site is broken up into 4 distinct lease areas. You have lease area 1, which now proposes a 5,625 square foot Chick-fil-A restaurant with drive-through, 70 indoor seats, 20 outdoor patio seats, and a queuing capacity of 39 standard size vehicles. Lease area 2 is a 1,425 square foot Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through, 20 indoor seats, 20 outdoor seats, and a queuing capacity of 21 standard size vehicles. Lease area 3 proposes a 2,600 square foot fast food restaurant with a tenant as of yet unidentified, with drive-through, 40 indoor seats on that one, and a queuing capacity of 15 vehicles. And lease area 4, which is the northernmost portion of the site, is a 6,400 square foot sit-down restaurant with an indoor seating capacity of approximately 200 seats. The site plan still proposes to have ingress and egress from Old Country Road in the form of a right-in, right-out, and there will be 2 ingress points on Mill Road. The southerly ingress point is configured to line up with the existing signalized intersection to Riverhead Center, and the northerly access point has also been reconfigured to line up with the northern egress from Riverhead Center. The applicant did submit a revised traffic impact statement. They had previously done a TIS on the proposed retail development. That TIS, the biggest recommendations to come out of that were some traffic improvements at the signalized intersection with Riverhead Center. That TIS recommended left turning lanes, left turn signals, reconfiguration of that intersection. This current TIS, which analyzed the newly proposed uses, did recommend some restriping, again, at the northerly ingress and egress point to the site. They did recommend the installation of a left turn lane with a 50-foot storage, as well as 1 right turn lane. They recommended assorted restriping. Now, the current plans that we have do not reflect those improvements at traffic intersection. So in terms of SECRA, I don't think the board can issue a finding or make a determination on the application, as those signal intersections and changes would be considered mitigation to any potential negative impacts. Just regarding buffers, there was a northern buffer which was required to the residential properties to the north. Town code requires a minimum non-disturbance buffer of 50 feet. Right now, the site plan shows, I believe it's 46 feet. So if they could just tweak this northern buffer a little bit to get to the 50.
Well, it's gonna be more than a tweak. Now this is a restaurant, which is a nighttime use, before it was retail. They're definitely gonna have to put some kind of sound wall on the northern portion and probably part of the western portion. Because now it's all night headlights to the homes neighboring in that community there. That's gonna probably be really important now that these are gonna be restaurants. And the other thing I see, the whole strip of green space on the western thing, I want that, or I'd like that to be something that doesn't require water, either AstroTurf or rocks or some other kind of landscape that doesn't require water behind those buildings along the western boundary. But we're definitely gonna need, I would think, some kind of sound barrier and sight barrier on the north and maybe part of the western boundary. That's just my thought.
Especially with the restaurant, it's going to be open later than,
I mean, there is a loading dock. Previously, when there was proposed retail, the retail was kind of situated along the western portion.
Yeah.
So the loading docks were on the western side near the commercial Commerce Drive subdivision. So now they are proposing a loading area to the north of that restaurant.
Yeah. And
So
the buffer is flimsy at best. So I think we gotta work on that with the applicant.
I have a problem with the calculation of natural parking, how this was calculated. Do you feel it's a sufficient amount?
So all of the parking was calculated at our town code's requirement, which is 1 parking stall per 3 seats. Based on the seating at the restaurants, code requires 126 stalls. They are providing 280. So it's well in excess of what's required by the town code. I wouldn't anticipate parking to be an issue. Was there a specific, do you feel that it's not enough parking, or do you feel that it was too much parking?
I think not enough for the whole project.
So, I mean, the one thing the Chick-fil-A, Dunkin' Donuts, and, fast food restaurant, as we've seen typically, the drive-throughs are becoming much more of a, much larger portion of these business models. They do have some indoor seating, but again, the parking is all based on the indoor seating capacity and the outdoor seating capacity. And it's more than twice what's required by the code.
See, there's actually 3 lanes of drive-through.
Yeah, the Chick-fil-A, like I said, it's 39 cars. And I've seen other Chick-fil-A's throughout the island where I will say Chick-fil-A manages their traffic very well. I recently, where my parents live in Hopog, they just opened one, and there was a lot of public input, a lot of public outcry about the potential traffic. Every time I've driven past it, they handle their cars, they queue them up, they line them up, they have traffic management plans. But again, 39 cars in a drive-through is a lot of cars. Maybe when it first opens, there might be a kind of novelty period where everyone wants to go, and there may be a surge when it first opens.
And I think there's also a fast turnaround in these kind of restaurants. They're not there for 2 or 3 hours fine dining and eating and vacating the parking spot.
That's true, and I think that they're closed on Sundays.
That's correct.
Closed on Sundays,
So we have comments on the potential need for the buffer for the impacts to the north and the west. Aside from that, again, they did, they revised the lighting plans, they revised their grading and drainage accordingly. We will just re-coordinate. We did the initial secret coordination on the project. The plans have been referred back out to the sewer and water departments. They are proposing individual connections, I believe, to each building, so I'm not sure exactly what the water district's requirements would be to get this site hooked up, or if there's any impacts that would be associated with it. But we will refer them back out to those departments and get comments from them. I did not see a cut-fill analysis. I believe the engineers are working on the cut-fill analysis to determine if there's any fill that needs to be exported from the site or imported. Doug, am I correct? You guys are working on those calculations for the cut and fill?
Yes. I can't recall the numbers exactly, but we've actually considered even the generation of material from the drainage, because there's quite a bit of drainage there. It's under 10,000, it's maybe 6,000 net or something like that. To speak quickly on the visual light cars from the north line, I believe that parking area is a considerable amount lower than that property line to the north. So headlights would probably not be an issue. As to sound, I don't know. I mean, there's a town code for, sound levels. I don't know what, but, we'll look at your comments, but I wanted to point out, I'm not sure I haven't looked at the plan in a couple weeks, but there's a grade difference there pretty well from the north line. I want to say it's 5 or 6 feet. It's probably on page 3.
Yeah, it's about, so you've got top of curve around that northern parking area around 35 and a half. Elevation at the northern property line ranges between 36 and 40. So there is a
Okay.
bit of a grade change up there.
We can do something up there.
All right, I can relay the comments regarding the sound wall. That was something that it was initially proposed. The board was kind of,
Yeah, but now it's a restaurant.
Now it's a restaurant.
Midnight or later, probably.
all right.
And I absolutely agree about having AstroTurf or something like that to minimize the water. For me, that's very important.
We have enough of, have we gotten comments back from the water department as to the ability to service this?
We had comments back from the water district back in December of last year. I haven't gotten comments on the new plans.
That was one wet star, I believe. Now we're talking about 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think essentially, the square footage is the same roughly.
It's just the uses are
I think we
very
need,
different.
I think we need to go back to the water department again. Will these buildings be sprinkled?
They have to be.
They have to be, exactly. Well, you know.
Okay, do we have anything else on this?
Well, just an update on the board, and got the feedback, we have it, and continue working with the applicant on it.
Okay, let's move on to our next discussion, which is Purple Beach Major subdivision. Who would like to come up?
So again, this is just a quick update. This is a major subdivision application which the board has been reviewing. Just a very brief history on it. Board approved a 4-lot as-of-right yield map on the subject property back in October of 2020. That same meeting, they approved an 8-lot yield map, which was predicated upon the purchase and redemption of 4 transfer of development rights, which is used in the code to increase density on the parcel. Back in September of this year, the board approved a 9-lot TDR sketch plan, which was also compliant with the Long Island Workforce Housing Act. So they went from 4 lots as of right, doubled it with TDRs to 8. The 9th lot was added to comply with the Long Island Workforce Housing Act, and that will be maintained as affordable housing under a town code provision, which is currently before the town board. So this is just, the applicant has submitted their preliminary plat, they've paid the necessary fees. So we're gonna initiate the secret coordination on this and send it out to all agencies.
I see they're gonna dedicate that one strip to the town.
That's the northern part, yeah, the northern part, that's
Why
gonna be,
does the town want it?
that would be the drainage parcel.
Okay.
There is a drainage parcel that goes on the north side and it wraps around on the western portion.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. All right. Now we have the continuation of the public hearing to solicit comments from the applicant in response to the secra for Breezy Hill for the November 18th hearing. Jeffrey?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Jeffrey Seaman. For the record, I am the environmental consultant retained by the planning board for both the secret review and site plan review of the Breezy Hill project. This is a continuation of the secret hearing that began, I believe, on November 3rd and has seen several extensions, and this will continue, as I now understand it, into January. First, I'd like to summarize the meeting of Tuesday. I concur with Mr. Voorhees' conditions that he explained, the different dialogues that we had, as well as the cleanup activities. I did a site inspection this morning in preparation for this hearing. The majority of the material has been removed. There's a small quantity of concrete still in the southwest corner. There's a dumpster on site, some other minor things, but I would say that the majority of the material has been taken off site, and I look forward to seeing the documentation on that. In response to Mr. Nenero's question, and I think you're somewhat driving to the core of 2 items that we discussed on Tuesday. First, Mr. Voorhees is correct that there was a waste characterization study that's required as part of a work plan by DEC before they could go in and clean up the site in order to classify the conditions of the material so that they would understand where the proper disposal site would be. And that is in the EIS. They do soil samples, and we have that information. That's why one pile was segregated, because it didn't meet the environmental quality to be recycled and likely has gone to a landfill. But the other question you had, and I think Mr. Voorhees brushed on it slightly, and it all folds back into the hours of operation and the operation itself. In the original EIS, there were for some confusing hours of operation, but it was still a 7-day-a-week operating facility. In the revisions that we've looked at to date, they have refined those hours of operation, still 7 days a week, but on Sunday, there's no tipping. So we have asked, and this was clarified at the Tuesday discussions with the consultants, we've asked to look at the worst-case scenario. What are the impacts when it's operating full scale during those 6 days, from 6:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock at night, and not just simply when material can be processed or might be processed? In my original testimony, I said that the applicant provided in their EIS what they call a daily throughput of 750 tons per day. That would be what they would expect to handle. I also stated that the equipment they were using could process 450 tons in an hour, and so I questioned why they had to operate for the extended time periods that they had proposed. I think we'll see that in the next response to those comments. But I want the board to understand something that's important in the overall project description. We're dealing with a facility that would be permitted to store a maximum of 26,000 cubic yards of material. As I've said before, 13,000 unprocessed and 13,000 processed. But that is an annual limit of material for the duration that it could remain on site. That is not a maximum of what could go to the site and through the site in any one year. That is why I've been so persistent about the hours of operation and the specifics of what would operate during those hours. To make this maybe a little bit clearer, or perhaps even more confusing, if I took the application as it stands today without any mitigation to reduce the number of days of operation, they could operate all the machinery and do all the processing 313 days a year. I subtracted out 52 Sundays. Based on their throughput of 750 tons, they could process 234,750 tons a year, which, when you calculate that in cubic yards, it's about 387,000 cubic yards in a year. Now, realistically, I don't see that happening. But if we looked at even 25% of that operation, if they reduced 75% in order to mitigate that impact, you're still looking at about 96,000 cubic yards. That could be where the facility grows to, because the DEC does not put a limit on that. They are only limiting the duration that material can stay either processed or unprocessed in any given year. So as long as they process or don't import any more raw material within that 365-day period, they certainly can take in and process much more. So that is why I've asked the applicant to take a look at the full-scale operation and not the intermittent or anticipated. And then certainly they can provide mitigation that they think is appropriate to reduce that number.
Jeff, do you have enough information to close the public hearing, or what is your recommendation?
We talked about that on Tuesday. We're in a little bit of an unusual area under SECRA because we typically just take a DEIS, provide comments, find the substantive comments, give it back to the applicant, maybe have a discussion for clarity purposes, and then look for a final EIS. We, and I say we, Mr. Voorhees and I have also had a sidebar that we want to maintain the secret record and keep it public. Even on this exchange of my comments, my written comments, their comments back to my comments, and this dialogue, which is really not unlike either one of us coming to the podium to have this discussion under this hearing umbrella. But that information has to be made part of the public record and accessible likely, through the website. I would like to give the applicants the opportunity to follow through with the discussion that we had Tuesday of this week, which is to give them time to come up with a schedule. Regardless of what we do at if we cut that public hearing off, you will receive whatever FEIS you're expecting. So I guess I also want to ask that question back to the board. Where's your comfort level with respect to having the information you would anticipate you need in order to have a final EIS that would have enough information in it that you could render a finding statement?
Jeff, I'm sorry I'm late, but I did have a couple of questions, and maybe I missed during the presentation. I had asked about the house well. Did they do anything on that yet?
They have located the house well. They have not sized it. They don't know what the pumping capacity is. I don't know what the county health department's feelings are about a prior residential use now going over to a commercial use. There were just too many unknowns on that. Mr. Voorhees, you missed this part of his presentation, said they were looking at the fire protection requirements. And I think a lot of that is dependent on the capacity of the well. Mm-hmm. I'm also going to reach out to Mr. Mancini when we do get information. It's premature now. When we get information on the well and what the expected pumping rates are going to be, how might that influence other wells in the area, even under a fire scenario? So there are still several unanswered issues, and I think they're important
Are
ones.
they
I'm
giving
not
you
trying
any idea of how much water they need on a daily basis to
to.
operate the facility?
I think they had a number in the EIS around 3,200 gallons per day, but I don't know how that factors into fire protection. As you know, in prior applications in this area, individuals looked at installing cisterns and other pressurized delivery systems for fire protection, and actually gave up on their project because they realized it was both very expensive and not really very feasible. But I don't want to cut off any opportunity that the applicant wants to use to have us look at.
We also have a question about something in the EIS that said what a certain amount of the material that was coming in they were going to use, and the rest of it they would sell.
All of the material is to be removed from the site, and I was out there this morning, and the majority of it is, except for a pile of unprocessed
Oh, no, I didn't mean
concrete.
the waste. I didn't mean the hazardous waste. I meant when they're operating. There was something about 50% of the materials that they would process, they would use themselves.
Oh, they are proposing to use 100% of the material themselves.
I thought that
And-
they said that they primarily will,
In the EIS, they said primarily. They have now changed that to 100%, at least in the responses to my comments of November 3rd. And that is why I wanted to present these numbers to you, that, in a worst-case scenario, or the best case maybe, if you were the operator, they would have to absorb 387,000 cubic yards of processed material. And even at 25% of that, it's a substantial number. Now, you're expected to take a look at both short-term and long-term impacts. So while they're their rate of processing and their need for the material might not be at that point today. It could be at that point in 5 or 10 years if an infrastructure bill is ever moved or approved, or there are major projects happening even at EPCAL, who knows? But those items will be weighed in the finding statement, under the category of looking at the need and the benefit versus the adverse environmental impacts. And again, be mindful, there are several facilities already in the town as well, and apparently the applicant has other facilities as well. I did not know about the Deer Park, but they actually presented their own facilities when we asked for a list of Nassau and Suffolk facilities operating in the vicinity. They added Nassau and Suffolk facilities, and they put their Westbury facilities in there. That's really where I got the information. It's in the EIS.
I know we may eventually get the site plan, but is this site going to have gates for open and close, when they're open and closed?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
In other words, the entrances and exits will have gates so that they're closed when they're not available, when they're closed.
So one of the original access was from Middle, and they broke through an access on Manor without a highway permit, so that was a violation that got resolved. That access point is still there. That will be the main access point for the materials coming in and going out, and only staff would use the other access point. But you can see that some of these volumes also affect the number of vehicle trips. They're going to affect noise levels. They're going to affect potential dust. And where they go with it, I don't know. I'm not preparing. I'm just reviewing. They'll need to take a good look at that. And because they're in an environmental justice area, impact on public health within that area is really the primary purpose of that area being identified. So things like dust, noise are all going to contribute to that impact analysis that is a little beyond the threshold of non-environmental justice area reviews, sort of escalates that. So to answer your question, I guess I don't have all the information to close the hearing, but I'm sure everyone is anxious to move on to the final stages.
You spoke about the staff having a certain area that they will be entering and exiting. About how many people will be employed?
I think they had projected only 3, maybe 4. Site manager, I suppose someone in the office to maintain the records. They have a scale at the site, so someone will need to be able to do the tear weights as materials come in. They're, I suppose, only exporting for their own use, so there wouldn't be any sales going on. You'll need someone operating the payloaders and somebody operating the crusher and screening plants. And it's usually 1 or 2 people that sort of jump around from piece of equipment depending upon the volume of material that's got to be processed. So it's not a high rate of employee, plus any drivers, I suspect, that they might need to have.
Okay.
Guess we'll leave it open. Waiting for more information.
So we will adjourn this to,
Nothing to add. It's comments from the public.
Okay, I was hopeful they hadn't left because, okay, great. I didn't want to suggest it being closed even, especially if the applicant was in the room. Thank you.
thank you.
So just, we are adjourning it until The next
So,
meeting,
the
correct?
January
So
6th,
January 6th
2022.
meeting at 7 PM here.
Correct. We don't need a motion for that. Okay, do we have any comments on any of the resolutions? I'm not seeing that, okay.
I'll move resolution 817, the Pulaski Street Warehouse, granting preliminary site plan approval, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Did I do that wrong?
No, there should be a motion in a second, and hopefully we'll, that's fine.
Okay.
Before we go to the next, did we get the resolution on Henry Sullivan?
That was Jeff's.
The extension?
Yeah, that was Jeff's resolution. I didn't work on that. Did we get a vote on that, on the 817? I didn't hear it, just for the record.
Aye.
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 All aye, all right.
I'll move resolution 118, Henry Sullivan minor subdivision to approve a 180-day extension for the 3-lot minor subdivision. So moved.
Second the motion?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Resolution approved.
I'll move resolution 119, Purple Beach major subdivision.
Second the motion?
Preliminary plan.
Resolution moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Resolution,
Move 120, classified action, claims lead agency issues negative deck pursuant to SEQA, and the site plan of T-Mobile at 14 Drummond Memorial Park.
Second the motion?
resolution moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution approved.
Move resolution number 121 for 60 Hidden Acres Path, so moved.
Second.
Resolution moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll move resolution 105, 19 Cromer Avenue / 1652 West Main Street to merge the two parcels.
So this is actually, we need a motion, this was a resolution that was tabled from the October 21st meeting. So we would need a motion to untable it.
I'll make that motion. Can I make that motion as well? I'll untable it.
I'll second it.
And then I would just like to amend it, reflective of the board's comments at the October 21st planning board meeting. Resolved on the second page where it says the planning board hereby grants administrative approval for the merger. We're going to include subject to the following conditions. The planning board will require a fence to be constructed on the northern side of the property between the proposed residence and the Long Island Railroad tracks, and that the planning board will require a fence to be constructed to the west of the house in order to delineate the limit of clearing to prevent encroachment into the proposed natural buffer area.
Makes sense.
Okay, let me restate. I will move resolution 105 to merge 19 Cromer Avenue with 1652 West Main Street as amended.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. May I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approved. Motion approved. Resolution approved. Okay. Did we do, I didn't cross it off. Did we do the phone?
Any
We
comment?
did comment. Okay. Do we have any public comments? I do not see anyone at this time.
I'll move resolution of the minutes of the planning board meeting for November 18th, 2021, so moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'll move the minutes of December 2nd.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Chairman, I'd like to have a little discussion with the board on other business.
Okay.
I did draft a resolution yesterday, I sent it to Jeff, but I think some little old lady in Pasadena must have got it because it's lost in cyberspace. After reading Riverhead Local yesterday about the car accident up on Horton Avenue and Reeves Avenue, The planning board has attempted in the past to try to get the town board to make that a four-way stop. Now another person has died, and other people have serious injuries. They did send this to the traffic committee, and I disagree with their opinion that it's not needed. It's very much needed. There's 3 fences on all 3 corners, really limiting the site. So I will prepare another resolution with Jeff, basically a sense of the board that we can send to the town board and see if we can't get them to make that a 4-way stop. Our number 1 job as public servants is to protect citizenry.
It's two-way now?
Yeah,
Two-way stop, only on
and there's been several really bad ones here. So that'll come next week. Maybe Jeff and I will have that for you. That was it.
Okay, thank you.
you just adjusted off the last one we did 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but we have to be a little bit more strong this time.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. Our next meeting will be Thursday, January 6th, 2022, at 7 p.m. here. I hope that everyone has a very happy holiday and a happy new year. Everybody stay safe. And
Motion to close the meeting.
we need a motion to close.
Yep, we do.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
I did it.
Like that.